I know a lot of you folks want to get some big jobs, but the coronavirus is keeping people inside and it's difficult to have the face-to-face meetings that are necessary. So I'm going to share with you something you can do from your car that can start building up a database of people who are highly likely to buy from you, not just to buy the regular electrical services that you do, but actually joint venture opportunities that will increase and basically be big dollars and big chunks. I'm Justin Hitt from Commercial Electrical Profits. Back when I was doing IT services, I would drive around and look for aerial antennas and the flat-plated directional Wi-Fi antennas, as well as point-to-point. It's basically kind of like a laser point-to-point that is a network bridge. I'd also look for generators, and I'd look for the bright orange cable that comes with a cable company, like a coaxial cable. So I would literally drive around industrial parks, business centers. I would walk through buildings. I would just basically walk around looking for these key elements because it told me that the customer had computer equipment. So I was performing low voltage wiring. Actually, I didn't actually do the wiring. All I did is set up computers. But that's part of what I'm going to share with you here. So I did low voltage wiring, and I needed the customer to have a data center. Otherwise, the job wasn't enough dollars to be worth doing. I didn't want to get stuck doing a cable drop here and a cable drop there and a little PC repair and PC scanning. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do big 5-figure jobs in the gate and jobs that I could work with partners because I didn't actually install the network wiring. I was not a licensed electrician. I was not authorized or knew how to pull the permits or anything for running low voltage wiring. I knew the basics about, you don't run the wires across ballast on lights. But when I talk with customers, they need it more than just a network wire drop somewhere. They might need 3-phase wiring in a data center so they could put in a storage array. And then from the storage array, they needed a fiber channel connecting to certain servers in the environment. Long story short, none of that mattered. None of the skills, none of the ability, none of the services that I could provide mattered if I didn't put them in front of a customer who cared. A little small business with 2 or 3 servers in a closet isn't going to need all this other stuff. And if I'm in there fixing the 2 or 3 servers in the closet, I'm not out able to find more clients. So what I did is I partnered with other organizations, and then I went out into the community and I found those things that are required for these other services to be there. So I mentioned generators. As an electrical contractor, you may or may not service generators. If you service generators and you provide the premise wiring associated with the generator, then someone who has a generator is a good prospect for you. But if you don't do this, and you don't have a partner that does this, then just having a generator means very little. Lighting systems. Retail establishments have specialty lighting systems. Hospitals have lighting systems that may be split on emergency systems. So that generator could be powering half the lights in the building. Well, that means, and I'm preaching to the crowd here, to the choir here, that means they have separate sets of wiring to the lights that are on the generator versus lights that are not on the generator. They may have a split system where lights are on the generator, but they have core essential systems on the generator as well. And then at the generator gets a certain point, it cuts off the lights, but keeps the life support systems running. Well, that's more likely in a hospital. You're not going to find that in an office building. And by driving around, you're going to get an opportunity when there's not a lot of cars on the road, not a lot of people wandering around, to go take a look at these buildings and see, do they have high inflow coming into the building? So an industrial park, if you're driving through and you see a generator and there's 4 or 5 utilities coming into it, the utility wiring coming into it, and you recognize that they've got a localized transformer on their building, what does that tell you? Okay? You might go see if there's a placard on the building. You write down the address because you can look the address up on the internet and see what businesses are there. Could be a manufacturing facility. If you do specialty wiring for manufacturing facilities and you've identified a new manufacturing facility you didn't know before, then you've got the opportunity to either get ahead of a tenant, meaning you're going to contact the building owner, or or interact with the tenant or the owner who's running a manufacturing facility at that location. These databases or spreadsheets that you're putting together are going to not be complete information to get started. Now, I will tell you, it is easier to go get a mailing list and target manufacturers or target hospitals, or I had a large number of dialysis centers as clients. You would think that network connections and computers at a dialysis center would not need a lot of changes, but I ended up with a network of dialysis centers that would regularly need the Ethernet ports replaced because some of their more advanced dialysis equipment actually had a power and Ethernet because it was sending back data to the main nurse station. And then, of course, they had computer problems. But you may find there's a Taco Bell chain, for example, that is constantly having lights redone. And they're putting a new store in every year. And you could be working that new store, and you could be working their break fixes in every other store, and that could be a good trickle of business. Now, it's not going to be the best business because sometimes they're managed from out-of-state offices, and they are really picky about how much they pay. Like dollar stores, for example, a lighting contract on a dollar store might seem okay to keep your entry-level technicians busy, but they may not be putting in a new store every year, so you may not be getting the full build-out or inside wiring contract that's available there. The key is if you don't know these people exist because you haven't gotten out and driven around and taken a look at things, well, then you're going to miss out on opportunities. I was talking with an owner of a local electrical company, and she's up in age a bit, but she still goes out. Her son drives the pickup truck. She'll go out, jump out of the truck, throw on a hard hat, and walk a job site. Now, you might be saying, well, I'm not supposed to be walking job sites. Isn't that trespassing? I'm not supposed to be driving around industrial parks and driving around office complexes. Isn't that? Well, you're not going in and looking in the windows. Okay, this isn't about being a peeping Tom. This is about being observant. Drive into a site, walk the site, take a look at what's going on. If there's construction, you want to look at you're probably not going to go any further than the job board. Okay. You might go to the project board, you look on it, see who the general contractor is. If it's a general contractor you know and they haven't called you up, you need to be working on that relationship. It might be a contractor from out of state who doesn't know who they should be hiring for the electrical work because they secured the job and they're driving people in from out of state and they might need a backup person locally. So you're focusing on name, address, and phone number. You're focusing on categorization. So a category would be office building with generator. Now, if you get to an office building and you see this beautiful office building and you don't see a generator, well, you know there's people in that building, and if the power goes out, they really ought to have a generator because it will preserve their equipment and it will protect their asset and allow their employees to work even though there's no power. And now, you know what? You do lighting as well. Maybe you don't do lighting. Maybe you have a partner that does lighting. But if they're going to have a generator, why not split the lights so that when the power goes out, they can have some light. But meanwhile, they don't put too much weight on the generator because the generator can run other things. What if they have a tiny generator and it's a big office building? Well, maybe they ought to have a bigger generator. What if it's a shopping center that's being dual used? So maybe the shopping center doesn't have as many tenants in anymore, but they still have a big generator up there. Maybe you could be contacting a commercial real estate person and looking at the opportunity of turning that old Sears into a shop. Now, you might be saying, well, I'm not in the real estate business. But guess what? That real estate person is in the real estate business, and as your partner would be aware of a new shop coming in. Now, you're suggesting a new shop in order to make an introduction or just making a conversation. You can do that on the telephone today. But ultimately, when that person needs electrical work because they got a new tenant coming in, who are they going to call? See, this is about getting out there and interacting with the physical structures that identify prospective buyers. You know, with this whole COVID thing, you can't just go out and start shaking hands and making connections that way. And, you know, a lot of the association general contractors, they cancel their meetings. They're not having the meetings. A lot of your social groups that you might have been getting that interaction, which creates that lead flow through referrals. I know a lot of you folks tell me all the time, I get my customers through word of mouth. Well, word of mouth has hurt quite a bit because you haven't reached out and got in touch with prospective customers, with prospective business partners or strategic partners. You haven't gone out and looked to see who's got things going on. If you're driving an industrial park and you realize the power's on, but their generators are running, and you swung back around the block to make sure it's just not the monthly cycle tests, and you realize they're running their generators, they're running full power, something's going on there. Now, it could be a giant weed farm or a meth lab, but the fact of the matter is probably they're running their machines around the clock, and they have the need for an adjustment in their utility use or their incoming utility. Also could be a data center. Data centers will sometimes cycle their generators in order to, depends on what pricing. So if you're selling generators, sometimes a natural gas generator and a diesel generator will be matched on like a data center, because natural gas pricing might be better at the time, or running the diesel might be better price at the time, and they will supplement their utility power. Or sometimes on peak, the utility power can't handle enough feed. Well, you know what? Maybe they ought to have solar panels. See, this is a exercise for you to get out there and find out what's going on in your community. If you're on travel, and if you haven't thought about this, I know a lot of people don't get a chance to vacation, but if you vacation the next town over, you can very often find opportunities that could expand your business. Now, I did mention joint ventures. Like I said before, as you're driving around, you're going to see things that you can't solve problems for. So you're going to see a building with a lot of power coming into it, and you don't do outside wiring, and you've identified it as a potentially manufacturing facility, but you know what you can see from the outside you don't do. Well, you need to partner with somebody. You need to invest in a relationship so that if you get a big job, you can bring in the right people. Because what's going to happen is, as you identify who owns the building, as you identify who's the tenant or who is operating in the building, as you identify who is placing people in those buildings and might be aware of other buildings that are of similar structure, because there are situations where you can't get past the gate, which is okay. You're going to start building this network of individuals who can help you find prospective jobs. You're going to make a list of prospective customers, and then you're going to start playing matchmaker. Now, you're going to find, and I did this when I was doing business development work for government contractors, is you're going to find opportunities that are on development. That means they're thinking about doing something. They haven't yet set up the RFP. They haven't yet committed on a vendor. And because you're out and about, very often you could be the main contact, and then you could put together a team to take care of the job. Now, you don't have to go as far as becoming a general contractor, and you can always get a list of general contractors and be a sub to a general contractor. But if it's a wiring job that needs, so for example, it's a new building, it already has a generator on it, and they need to spec out a generator, lighting, inside wiring, it doesn't matter what part of that you do. It's better to have 10% of a 100% job than 100% of no job. So what I'm talking about here is just simply going around. I would use a little tape recorder, and I would record the address and everything into it and send it off for transcription. My assistant would put together the lists, and then I would send out an introduction piece. I would send out a letter. Hey, I was driving about the neighborhood, and I noticed you had a large diesel generator out back and a Wi-Fi direct signal. If this is yours, that tells me you've got computer systems in your office, and you may be looking for someone to do service and repair on your computers. And when I was doing this for government contractors, we were looking actually for office facilities with a large number of administrative staff. I would say, look, I noticed you had a large building, and I would look in the contract register, and you have this contract with the U.S. Navy, and you may be looking for this, this, and this. And I would just go down the list and get that information out. Now, what happened is I would end up sending 100 letters a week out to these different places, because I'd go out and do a job at an industrial park, and then on the way out, I would canvass the park and gather some information, and then I might send 70 letters. And by the way, these letters are templates, and you or simply just put in a little bit of detail based on what you found at each facility. I would get back some letters saying, oh, well, hey, yes, that's right. We got a data center, but I'm not the person to talk to. Go talk to Jerry. That's great. I update my list. I reach out to the next person. Sometimes I get a letter back that says, hey, I have an immediate need. I need somebody to virus scan a PC. I didn't want to do that job. It's a tiny job. But you know what? I went out there to do it just so I could meet the decision makers. And a lot of times with the government contracting world, the jobs under $25,000, they would use a purchasing card. So we would take the jobs under $25,000, but that wasn't ideal. But I would go along, even though I wasn't doing any work. I go along and I meet the decision makers, try to assess what else they have going on, and then I would leave and come back and check on the technicians doing the work later. But ultimately, I could turn a $25K job, a $10K job into $1 million job because I was out there, I was interacting, I was observing, I was finding out what's going on. When we went to job sites, some of my clients did electrical work. We would go to job sites and look for that little the construction board, which is the basically two 2x4s stuck in the ground. It's got all the permits on it. I would go down and write down all the permit numbers. Today, you don't even need to go to the site, but I encourage you to go to the site because you'll see things. But I'd look to see if they are running underground conduit. If they're running underground conduit for electrical, and they already had, it's going to say somewhere who the electrician is, who the electrical company is. But I'd always look to see if they had empty pipes, because if they had a bunch of electrical conduits running, and then a kind of a spaced off of that, they had some empty conduits with just runners in them, that tells me they're probably going to put some networking in there. So I'd call up somebody who's doing networking work, and I'd say, hey, look, I'm over at such and such a job site. I see they got electric taken care of in place. That's my client's area, but I did notice they had a bunch of empty conduits, and that's your area. Are you doing anything with this job? And then I try to get my client as the backup off the main electrical, in which sometimes they'll use the backup just when they come into a crunch. Maybe they're up against deadline and they need 5 more technicians on site, but they're driving in technicians from 2 states over. Well, now they can partner with the local, and they can take the local to fill in the gaps. But then I'd get my partner in for the network work, and then the next time they get called in on a network job, what do they say? They say, hey, you guys need electrical. We know a great electrical in town who can take care of a lot of the work that you've got. But long story short is now you've built this ecosystem of leads. You've built this ecosystem of knowledge, which is which sites have which needs. And then you've gotten a bunch of little tiny jobs, which are okay as long as you send a business development person along, or you go meet the owner, or you go in and do an introduction visit, so that you can ultimately know what's up. And then with this information, you put it in a customer relationship management system, which is a back-end software platform, and then you can drip some campaigns. Introductory letters is the best thing to do when you first get those addresses, because they're not always accurate. Postcards are awesome. I always expand my information, so I do try to find out who owns the building in case somebody other than the tenant owns the building. And then start cultivating those connections depending on who they are. Commercial real estate folks are great lead sources. Contractors who do things for the same customer, but they do different things than what you do, great lead resources, great partners. And then, of course, the general contractors and the property developers are always good, because you can get in on a job before it goes live. Many of the subscribers of Commercial Electrical Profits have like these ready cash cows going, where they got a service contract with 8 to 10 different retail companies, or the property owner, and then as the retail establishment changes out, they're going in and redoing the lights, redoing the power, redoing the telecom systems. They might have some bread and butter type jobs, which is simply an affluent neighborhood. So they partner with a country club. They might sponsor golf tournaments, and then ultimately come into that community, that affluent community, and do inside wiring for homes. And now that Tesla's popular, they've even some of them have started to do the Tesla home wiring systems for the power cells. I wanted to make sure you had something now, because you don't get stuck inside. With the internet today, you can do a lot of this kind of research online. If you need help doing this kind of research, I can show your administrative staff how to support you in this. But I do need you, as the owner, as the big boss man or boss girl, to see what's happening here, because you will be shocked. A simple drive around the neighborhood or around an industrial park will reveal to you customers you didn't know exist. And in fact, customers that you can get in touch with and start building that relationship with long before your competitors. I'm Justin Hitt with Commercial Electrical Profits, and this has been a practical application of what we call strategic relations. It's about you knowing more than anybody in the marketplace and being the connector of solutions for your specific customer. Thanks for listening. You can ask your questions at www.commercialelectricalprofits.com.